Welcome to the Volleyball Strength and Conditioning webinar tonight. I say this every time, I think, but I do appreciate everyone coming out. There's a lot of things you can do on your Thursday evenings, but it says a lot about who you are as a parent, as a coach, as a player, that you elected to spend your time with us and learning and trying to get better and trying to master your craft. So I think that is a compliment to everyone here. And I think, speaking of that, one thing that, in my opinion, not a lot of people know about Pete is that Pete was one of our very first athletes at T3. Pete, you started like maybe in 8th grade?
Yeah, 7th grade, yep.
7th grade. So same, Pete started our very first facility over in Westlake. And it obviously is 180 degrees from where it is now. So after, Pete was an athlete for us. Obviously he went to college, got his degree, came back and decided to work for us too, which has been awesome. But I think one of the things that really, I don't know, at least bonded me with Pete and that I saw in him early was that he had a very strong quest for knowledge, especially about his sport and about training. He always wanted to know why. He always wanted to know why we're doing specific things, want to know how this would benefit, and want to know, why we're doing what we're doing in the gym and how that's going to benefit on the track or on the basketball court or on, on the field of play. So I think that was huge for him. And I now see that echoing in his training that he does with 10 Foot Club. Everything that he does has a specific reason as to why. And I guarantee you every exercise that's in there probably has at least like an hour or 2 hours of research done as to how that can benefit these girls and how they can get them better and jumping through the ceiling and really kicking butt on the volleyball court. So it's been really, really impressive to get to know Pete, to watch him progress as a human being, as a young man and as a coach. And I'm really excited for him to share some information tonight and really see where that 10 Foot Club is going to go in the future. I really see big things for it. I don't know. The quality of training is by far second to none. It's been awesome to see it grow. So I'll stop rambling a little bit and turn it over to Pete. But again, any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat box or we'll go over some Q&A right there at the end. So Pete, on to you.
Cool. Sweet. Thank you, Eric. Thank you guys, everybody, for coming out tonight. Like Eric said, it is, you could be doing a million different things on your Thursday night, and to spend it here with us is awesome. I'm very appreciative of it. So thank you again. So real quick, gonna share presentation. And then, all right, so for anybody that doesn't know me, my name is Pete, and I am the director of the 10 Foot Club at T3 Performance, and that is our volleyball-specific performance training group. Started it about 2.5 years ago with 2 girls, and we've grown it into a group of about now 45, I believe. And so it's been cool to see this coming from a background where I've never played volleyball, never really had any experience with it. Had a little bit about it in college, but to go into an area where I wasn't super comfortable and have some success and get a lot of buy-in from these girls that are middle school through college recruits has been really cool over the past couple of years, and I've learned to love it. And it's now like one of my favorite populations to train. It's pretty much like all I do. So let's see. So goals for today's presentation is going to go over a couple housekeeping things based on the email and everything that you got. Tell you a little bit about myself, give you my value statement about what when it comes to training the 10 Foot Club. Talk a little bit about what I call the yearly game plan, or how I go about planning training for the girls all year round, and what the difference is between in-season and off-season training. We'll talk a little bit about total body power training. So obviously volleyball players are always shooting for a higher vertical, but upper body power is not something to be neglected as well. So talk about that for a little bit, and then talk about some ways that in our training we try to reduce the risk of injury. So those words are very particular in the way that they're worded, and that, like, with us being professionals, we never say that we can eliminate injury or the chance of injury, but if we can do anything to reduce the risk of injury, that's good on us, I guess. So again, thank you for logging on and spending the time with us. So the first thing that I want to go over is in that email with the Zoom link at the bottom, there should have been an attachment with a couple of handouts. I'll be referencing those as I go along. And that's just for your a value add, I think, where if you are somebody that works with volleyball players in the realm of strength and conditioning, or wants to dive deeper into that area, there's some helpful things in there. Working way through that, there's one talking about our levels. There's one talking about how I structure training. There's a couple what I call wellness questionnaires, which I'll explain what those are. And then there's a list of articles as well as some thought leaders in the area of volleyball strength and conditioning, or just strength and conditioning in the for certain performance benefits that are similar and what we're looking for in volleyball players. So I also just like always starting presentations with what I call who and how. And so who am I talking to and how is this going to benefit you? So if you're an athlete, I hope that this presentation, you take away something that helps you feel like you can increase your performance, or something that'll benefit your performance. If you're a parent of a volleyball player, I hope that you catch on that I'm talking a lot about how we try to keep our athletes safe and how to train effectively, as well as how to increase the performance of your volleyball player, because obviously every parent wants to see their kids succeed. If you're a volleyball coach, I just hope that you get an education of, or further your education on how strength and conditioning works into your plan for your team, and how you can better your team with that addition. And then if you're another performance coach, then I hope that you just get a couple of tidbits here and there that maybe like refine your practices, or have you think of something in a different light, or spark your interest into diving down a rabbit hole about a different avenue. So a little bit about me. I graduated from the University of Dayton in 2018. During my time in college, I had the chance to do 3 Division I strength and conditioning internships. I did my first D1 internship at Cleveland State University between my freshman and sophomore year of college. And my primary responsibilities there were working with the men's and women's basketball team. So that was cool. That was my first time working with high-level athletes and seeing what all entailed their performance training. And then between my junior and senior year of college, I did an internship at the University of North Florida in Jacksonville, where we worked primarily with men's and women's soccer as well as men's basketball. And then throughout my time at UD, I got a chance to work with almost all, if not every single sport team. And that's where I kind of started getting into volleyball performance training. And I got a chance to work with them for maybe 2, 3, 4 semesters and see what like a full year looks like for them. When I was in high school, I was a basketball player and a sprinter in track. So I've always been really obsessed with the idea of getting faster and jumping higher, and definitely more so in jumping higher. So for the people that don't know me or have never met me, I'm about 5'8". And so my goal in high school was always I wanted to dunk. And then when I could dunk in high school, it was like, okay, I want to dunk in a game and stuff like that. So I've always been trying to jump higher and higher. And so it's now cool to transition that to these girls that have the same desire. And then at the time of this webinar, I think I counted it out to be, I train 28 college volleyball players, 24 high school volleyball players, and then 13 middle schoolers. So I'm training a lot right now, but I'm hoping to grow more as we go.
So Pete, can I interrupt you for 1 second? Can you go back for 1 second? I want to comment on one of those pictures. So one, obviously it's a pretty cool picture with you playing basketball. But Chandler, right down here in the trap bar deadlift, that's like 215 pounds. So that's such like a, I would love when people talk about, women shouldn't train heavy and all this kind of stuff. And like, she's moving a pretty fair amount with 215 pounds, a pretty fair amount of weight for a girl that weighs, 115 or 120, so just that overall lower body power that she's putting in the ground, I think is fantastic. That's just an impressive picture. I apologize.
Yeah. And then if you can notice as well, she's got a band on there too. So it actually probably is a little bit more than that 215. So
yeah, right on. That's awesome.
Cool. So value statement is kind of just what I approach every single training session with. And if I'm ever kind of stuck figuring out like what to do next, I kind of always go back to this because it reorients me and helps me figure out what the best course of action is. And so working our way with it, I help volleyball players learn how to effectively train year round so that they can stay healthy and improve performance despite an intensive competitive schedule in order to reach their peak potential. And so this is where I took kind of what I wanted to break down and talk about today from. So teaching girls how to effectively train year round, how to try and stay healthy as best they can and improve their performance despite an intensive competitive schedule. So I never really knew how intensive volleyball was. I thought that similar to what I played for AAU, where school was the main season, and then AAU or in this case club volleyball was kind of something you did in the spring to stay ready for school season. But I was blatantly wrong apparently, where I didn't realize that JL was to the level that it is. And so looking at a full year where there's two of these really big seasons, it doesn't leave a lot of time for just dedicated strength and conditioning or performance training. So we've had to be creative and had to have a lot of conversations with the girls to make sure that we're giving them the best service possible. So diving into the yearly game plan or how we train year round. So we run our program and I run my program on a level system, and that's because of the population that I work with. So I work with 12 to 18-year-olds with a couple college girls that come back every summer and train with me as well. And so why do we do a level system? It's because it leads to skill and age appropriate exercises. So obviously we want our program to be challenging to all of our athletes, but we also don't want to do something that's unreasonable for where they're at. So we want to meet them where they're at, but also give them something that's going to push them to that next level. The other reason is it gives my athletes something to push toward. So I run a 4-level program, black, blue, white, and then if you graduate from the white program, I'll write custom programs for you based on what you need. But if I have 2 girls that are friends come in and one's on the white level and one's on the blue level, and they ask, hey, what does that mean? And then I tell them like, okay, white level means you're getting to do a little bit more advanced training, some quote unquote cooler exercises and stuff like that. That person on the blue level is probably going to be like, well, shoot, if she's there, I want to get there too. So it drives some competition for each individual person. And so the way that you would level up or graduate from black to blue, blue to white, and then white into custom would be showing proficiency in 3 staple movements that we ran throughout that program. So usually the program is about 12 weeks, and we'll revisit those exercises and see how you're doing. And if you knock them out of the park, then you get to move up. So this handout, this is a printout of the handout that you guys have. And so if you are one that is working with volleyball athletes in strength and conditioning, this is a great template to use, I think. So moving ahead to kind of how we set up an individual session. So at T3, our 10-foot club sessions run for 90 minutes. And in that 90 minutes, they'll do a warm-up, they'll go through speed, they'll be in the weight room, and then they'll finish with conditioning and recovery. So warm-up takes about 10, 15 minutes, speed another 10 to 15 minutes, and then they're in the weight room for 50 to 60, and then we're doing conditioning or recovery at the end with whatever time we kind of have left over. And that conditioning and recovery depends on where they're at in their season, what time of the week it is as well. So if they come in on a Friday, I don't want them to be doing a lot of conditioning, if any at all, if they're playing that weekend. But if I know they have the weekend off and they don't play for a couple of weeks, maybe we can sneak in a little bit extra conditioning to keep it up. And then this handout, again, is in your packet. This is how I break down my sessions, where the first 4 would be the warm-up, and then the rest would be how I would break up the exercises for that given day. With speed and conditioning and recovery, that's more variable for me because of the girls that I'm working with and having them come in sporadically. So we have our staple 5 or 6 movement categories for speed that we want to hit, whether that be lateral, back pedal, reaction agility, change of direction, acceleration or top speed. Looking at the group at any given day, I might have 3 different girls than I had the day before, and they haven't gotten one of those things in yet this week. And so it's on me to figure out what they need and what would benefit them the most that given week. So that's more fluid, as is the conditioning. With the conditioning, I kind of break it up into 2 different areas where we're doing something very intensive and very short duration with a little bit longer rest for that recovery aspect. So they're getting that heart rate spiked and then getting some time to recover, similar to what would be a short volley, and then that momentary time between another play before the whistle, or a short play and then a timeout is called. Or we go to the complete opposite side where we're doing something more long duration, low intensity, aerobic based, so that we're training the body to be more efficient at their recovery between those games. So that comes in handy when we're thinking of like a JO tournament where they're playing. Take this past year where I've heard that girls were playing back to back to back to back matches, and some of those go to 5 matches. Being able to recover between those effectively and come back to and rebound at your peak performance, or as close to it as you can, is huge. And so that's what we're trying to achieve when we're going toward that more long duration aerobic conditioning. So moving right ahead into how we develop power with these girls. So we have 3 power tests right now. I've been experimenting with some other different ones that I might want to include, but as is, we do the block jump, we do the counter movement vertical, and we do an approach jump. So I revisit this about every 16 to 20 sessions, I'd say roughly, or 12 to 16 actually, depending on if they're on a 3-day rotation with me or if they're on a 4-day program with me. So if a girl is pretty consistent, that turns out to be maybe 3 or 4 weeks. So every month they're getting retested, and if nothing else, with some of the younger girls, obviously they're still growing, so their numbers should keep going up just as they mature and get better at their sport and more developed. It's a conversation starter with all of the girls though about, okay, there's 3 options. Either your jumps went down, your jumps stayed the same, or we went up. If your jumps went down, it's a conversation about what else is going on in your life. Are you stressed? What just happened? What day of week is it? If it's Monday, did you have a tournament this weekend? Like, why are we going down if we're being really consistent in the weight room? Because it should trend in an upward manner. If we're staying the same, then okay, you're taking care of your business. Maybe there's some things that I need to tweak in my programming that didn't give you the adaptation that I wanted. So then we just sit down and say, okay, what did you like about your program? What didn't you like about your program? How can we blend that together, keep the things that you really like or enjoy doing, and also you see benefit in, and take away the things that you don't like doing, and then figure out a way that we can see that improvement. And then if you improve, it's like, okay, you're killing it, keep going with what you're doing, and this is what we want to strive for next. So you hit a 23-inch approach jump. Okay, that next mark, 25. So what's your focus for this next 4 weeks? What 2 or 3 exercises are you going to just attack every single time you come in, regardless of how you're feeling? And how are we going to try and get you closer to that 25-inch approach? Then for our upper body power, main 3 that I use are love using med balls. I think they're super beneficial just for the benefits and the similarities to what it would be in like the sport of volleyball. So med ball toss is like what's at the top where all the girls are doing something that comes from right to left, or where the arms cross over the body, and so does the implement. So that's where we're talking about that rotational power that comes in handy on serves, on hits, on anything like that. Training that is huge. And then the med ball throw is coming from overhead, like the bottom left, where they're coming from overhead and throwing it straight down toward the base of the wall. And that's huge for blocks and teaching them how to just be powerful through extension and flexion. And so also with med ball tosses and throws, those while they teach power, they also teach the girls how to decelerate after creating force through an implement. So that's very similar to making contact with a volleyball. If you go for a hit and then after that, you got to be able to decelerate your arm and then get control of your body again so that you can come down from your land or land from your jump and then get back into a play. And then landmine pushes, I got two of the college girls in the bottom right doing a landmine split jerk. I love the landmine because it's really simple to teach. Anybody can really do it if you just give them a couple coaching cues. It is in a shoulder friendly position. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means when we get to the risk reduction part. It's safe, it's effective. And so I like using those more so than maybe doing like a straight barbell press overhead or using dumbbells even to go into a jerk there. Then for our lower body, my main three that I use are obviously jumping, sprinting, and then what I call loaded triple extensions. And then I put the Olympic variations, which would be, for the people that aren't familiar, the clean and then the snatch. We use those, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as I go through these jump sprints and the loaded triple extensions. So there's a slide later in this section that talks about kind of the things that I think about when I'm trying to program jumps for the girls. And there's a lot of thought that goes into that. So I'll leave that for that slide. But then sprinting, I think, is a super valuable skill that a lot of girls need, and especially top end speed. So in volleyball, you're not going to ever achieve maximum velocity because the court is just too small. So you'll never actually get into top end speed, but there's nothing in a weight room or a volleyball setting that gives the adaptation quite like top end speed. So if you think of a somewhat elite 100-meter sprinter, they may run 100 meters in 10 seconds. If you work that back to figure out how fast they're actually moving, it roughly works out to be 10 meters per second if you broke that across the course of the race. Velocity-based training is an area in volleyball strength and conditioning and strength and conditioning in general that has gained some traction and some popularity. And everything else in the weight room setting, the most that I've ever seen, like on a jump, is 1.5 meters per second. So 10 meters per second versus 1.5 meters per second is a huge difference. And the other thing is, with top end sprinting, if you get more effective and more efficient in your top end speed, it's going to bring along your acceleration, because in order to be faster at your top end speed, your acceleration needs to be more efficient. You need to be able to transition into that better. And so I just think there's a lot of added benefit to that people don't really think about, because they never think I'm never going to run that fast in volleyball. Then in this bottom middle section, I have a girl named Lexi doing a hex bar hang high pull. And so I love the hex bar for loaded triple extensions because I think I revert back to things that I can cue really simply, are really easy to do and perform, and the athletes pick up pretty quickly. And so all she has to focus on when she's doing that is, hey, I want you to keep great posture when you go down. So let's go shoulders forward, hips back. And then I want you to drive your feet through that platform and explode up and let that bar float up. And so then she gets this good triple extension right here. And then so back to the Olympic variations, we still do those with our girls because they are such staples in a lot of strength and conditioning programs. And so I think it's valuable to teach them how to do it in case when they leave our doors, if they go to a high school, they go to a college, they go to another gym, they ask them to perform that. I want them to be the best athlete in the gym performing those lifts. And I want them to be like models for coaches to be, if another girl doesn't know how to do it, hey, watch, in this case, Ella do a hang clean and stick it and nail it. There is still power development in it, and they are super valuable, and so that's why we keep them in, but we do it more so for the learning aspect of things. So going back to the jumping and how we categorize and consider jumps and where they fall in a program. So I use this quadrant system as kind of like how I look at or consider what to put in the program. So from the y-axis, you got single response and multiple response. So that just means a single response jump would be something where you jump and then you land and then you stick it and you reset. Multiple response would be something more so where you're repeating that jump over and over again. And so the ground contact time is much faster and the adaptation is different. And then we always have to consider yearly, like what's the impact on the joints. So that we have our low impact jumps and our high impact jumps. So for example, a banded broad jump, you can only do one because the band's going to stop you. So, and the band's also going to take some of your body weight away when you land. So that's going to be categorized as a low impact single response jump. Whereas a high impact multiple response jump might be a hex bar jump or a weighted jump that I want you to be quick off the ground every single time. And so I just look at this and think, okay, where are we at in the year? Where are we at in their season? What does the girl need? Is she more of a just needs raw power? Maybe we'll do more of the single response jumps and then we can decide between low impact and high impact. Or is it somebody that needs to be a little bit more whippy or just elastic and springy? So then we'll probably do something more multiple response, and again considering where they're at in their season and the impact that we are having on their joints. So then the last little bit was talking about reducing the risk of injury, and so highlighting 3 different areas that get injured. Obviously there's more to it, but these are 3 that I've dealt with a number of times. And so I had to reassess and think, okay, how are we trying to prevent these before they happen or reduce the risk of them? So for the shoulder, we're going to do some scapula free pressing like this half kneeling landmine press. And that's, again, puts the shoulder in a very shoulder friendly position. And it also allows the shoulder blade to go through its full range of motion. So for those of the people that don't really know, your shoulder blades obviously sit on the back. And so as you press up overhead, we want those shoulder blades to upwardly rotate and glide around the rib cage. And they also come kind of around the rib cage as they come up. And so sometimes when we're going like with straight bar overhead presses or something completely overhead, we'll have compensatory movements of thoracic extension where they're getting that movement from their back and they're not letting that shoulder blade actually move. So the landmine press is a good way to change that up. And then on the right-hand side, I got a couple girls doing different variety of carries. So a plate overhead carry, a farmer's carry, and then a single arm farmer's carry or a suitcase carry. And so that's just teaching them how to maintain good posture while performing gait and doing something, walking, and pulling them back into great posture. And then rowing is huge for a lot of athletes, but volleyball players especially, because their sport is all in front of them. They hit in front of them, they pass in front of them. So their front side, they usually sit forward. And so being able to, again, pull them back into and balance them out is huge. Then for the hips, volleyball players that I've seen a lot tend to be quad dominant just because of the demands of their sport. They jump a lot, and so they use their quads a lot. And so talking about a balanced athlete, again, we're going to do a lot of posterior chain exercises. And so the posterior chain is really everything on the back half of the body, from the upper back all the way down to the bottom of the hamstrings, even the calves too. So Isabella here is doing an RDL, which is a great exercise for that, strengthening the entire posterior chain, and again, bringing that up. Triplanar movements, making sure that we're doing movements in the sagittal, the frontal, and the transverse plane, because sport occurs in all 3 of those different planes. And so making sure that we're giving them those things in a weight room setting is huge. And then Ella over here is doing a depth drop, which I would consider as rapid eccentric loading, which is what people think about when they think about like landing mechanics and teaching them how to come down in a proper position quickly. And then for the knees, again, talking about landing mechanics, always want to talk about how when you come down from a jump, we don't want to see what's called knee valgus, where those knees collapse in. We want to try and keep those knees in line with the ankles and in line with the hips. That's huge. Single leg training is good for that same thing of keeping the joints stacked. So Sophia here is doing a rear foot elevated split squat, and teaching her to keep her knee over top of her foot as she goes down. And then there's a lot of research now into isometric training, which is just holding like a static position or just holding a still position. maybe like the bottom here on the right, if we just ask Sophia to hang out there for a while, the benefit of getting all of like the blood flow and the nutrients and everything into that joint space of the knee is super beneficial to strengthening those tendons, strengthening those ligaments, and making sure that we're avoiding anything like patellar tendinopathy or just nagging knee pain and stuff like that. So I have a couple girls that have been doing isometrics at the beginning of their workout every workout, and they have had great success with getting rid of their knee pain. So again, just want to say thank you. And then before we kind of open it up for the Q&A and everything, I wanted to give you guys my contact information in case there was anything that I said that you want further clarification on, or if you just want to dive deeper on a certain topic, or if you just want to reach out and just talk shop, whatever it might be. Best two places to probably reach me would be my email at pete@t3athlete.com, or you can find me on Instagram at coach_Koza. Yes, so send me an email, send me a DM on Instagram. I'd love to talk about anything that I talked about or anything different. And then I definitely recommend, if this is something you found interesting, check out that list of articles that I attached into the handouts, as well as the leaders or thought leaders in this field, if you want to dive deeper into kind of what goes into it.
Awesome. So I want to, again, like Pete just said, to open it up for some questions. If anybody has any, just go ahead and throw them in the chat box, and I can read them off. One thing that came in before was a good question, I thought, was what can a player kind of do at home in conjunction to some of the things that they're doing with you, Pete? Like, are there certain things that maybe they could focus on that won't be hindering what they do when they come into you?
Yeah, so if you're already staying consistent with like a training protocol or a training program at like a facility or with me or whatever, and if you're practicing, we probably want to stay away from adding more jumping into that. I think a lot of people think that more is better in that regard. Like, if they want to get better at jumping, like, there is something to be said of, if you want to get better at jumping, you need to jump. But I think that time away from training in a team setting, and more so at home where resources might be limited, your equipment might be limited, doing something more like like isometrics, if you have knee issues, or if you want to try and avoid knee issues and stuff like that, that would be a good one. Recovery and stuff like that. And then thinking of general like sound movement, I would say.
Excellent. Oh, nice. So Mindy was talking about too. What age do you recommend the kids starting training?
So we start ours at 12, and that seems to be a pretty good age. That's a good age for the fact that they're starting to hit their growth spurts and get a little bit more developed. And so it's a good time to catch them, where we can make a lot of progress in a little bit of time, because they necessarily won't know how to control their body super well. And so teaching them the finer points of that, as well as they are just a little bit more developed to start using weights like dumbbells, bands, med balls, kettlebells, things like that. We probably wouldn't start using barbell too much until they're a little bit older, maybe going in closer to high school, so 7th to 8th grade. I have a couple girls that are 10, 11-ish, and they can start training with just movements, but we usually just limit it to just body weight stuff at that point. So I'd say 10 for movement, 12 for starting to use a little bit of weights.
Perfect. And then do you recommend any like recovery or mobility stuff in between matches? Let's say, obviously some of these tournaments, they're having 2-3 matches back to back to back. Do you suggest they do anything in between, or is it just like a recovery, just like literally just get off your feet and eat something and relax?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to how much time you have. If you're going back to back to back games, it probably might want to just focus on getting something quick to eat and kind of taking a little bit of time to just rest. If you have an hour or two, like another match is playing in between you, you could probably start thinking about doing a little bit light stretching. But I would do the stretching after the game, like right after your first game, and then obviously make sure before you get into that next game that you do something more dynamic again. So because we don't want to go from just sitting around and relaxing to up and at 'em and trying to play another game.
And then to any other like kind of last minute questions, feel free to throw them in there. And two, there's no maximum age, right? Like you can be like a college age athlete and come in and do training, right? Or you can be like me, like you would train me. I'm old and decrepit. I could jump in there.
Right. Yeah. I think my rates would be a little bit different for you, but yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It's because it's a lost cause. You're like, if I'm gonna have to work on this, I'm gonna charge you double.
Right.
Nice. Do you guys do group or individual training?
Both. So 10-foot club is a group. Individual would be more of personal training. I like both. I keep my group sizes small with the 10-foot club, try and limit it to 10 or less, because I think if I get more than 10 in a group setting, there's a loss of quality in that, like I still get to see each person, but it's like very minuscule because I feel like I'm fielding questions here and there and every time I turn around. Individual is fun as well because you get to really get to know a kid and learn what like makes them tick and everything. And so usually that's just I get to see them a little bit less frequently, but there's a trade-off on either side. I like both. I like small groups and I like PTs a little bit better though, I think.
Cool. So same last chance for any kind of last minute questions. Again, so to kind of wrap everything up too, or reiterate, so we'll be sending out the slides from today, the packet or the worksheets that Pete was talking and going over during the presentation, and then two, we'll be able to send out the recording of this webinar tonight too. So if you missed anything, if you want to go back over and kind of learn and go over some of the jumps and the movements and the things that Pete were talking about, go ahead and do that. And obviously too, Pete's always open. If you have additional questions, I know I do this all the time that like, I don't say anything and then 2 days later, oh man, I should have asked him this question, or like, oh dude, I should have said this. So, feel free to reach out to Pete or T3 or give us a call or whatever. I'm sure he can answer any questions that you might have that pop up afterwards. But cool. Yeah. So if there's no more questions, we're gonna kind of wrap it up. Again, Pete, we appreciate you coming out and I appreciate you going over what you do with the girls, and it is awesome to see the progression, see the girls come in and just watch them progress as athletes. It's been really cool. So again, I appreciate your time and have a good Thursday.
Thank you, everybody.
Cool. Yeah, we'll see everybody. Thanks.